Hear me now and clear. Esteban Ocon is gonzo. Se finito. Done. It's finished for Esteban Ocon. And I say that partially sadly, I'll be honest with you. As somebody who rates Esteban Ocon fairly highly as far as his uppermost ceiling, as far as potential, of course, what's panned out season to date hasn't worked out for him. Ergo, we get the statement from Chris Medden, legend of F1 journalism, that Esteban Ocon will leave Alpine at the end of this season. Both sides say they have agreed to part ways, no confirmation of his next move or replacement just yet. They've agreed to part ways. Behave yourself. By mutual consent, yeah? You know what that means. Esteban Ocon has been sacked, for want of a better word. Behave yourself. Owing to poor performance, right? You can't continue to sabotage the team by crashing into your teammate. As soon as I saw the Sky Sports video on YouTube, 6 times that Esteban Ocon crashed into his teammate, I knew that on the back of the most recent incident at Monaco, that Esteban Ocon's time potentially in F1, definitely at Alpine, was limited. Look, let's run through the most recent incidents. And again, the irony is not lost on me that Esteban Ocon has said most recently that the important thing, quote, the important thing is to be secure as early as possible. That is a clear target of mine as far as seats in 2025 they're running. That is the clear target of mine, quote, I don't want to pay the price a second time. That is Esteban Ocon, courtesy of the race, on his 2025 F1 free agency. There are only 20 drivers in F1. Indeed, it is rarefied air. That would be an understatement, a gross understatement even. So Esteban Ocon, what he couldn't afford to do, forget the performance and the qualifying and the poles and the race victories, what you absolutely cannot afford to do in your lowest performance moments is crash into your team, particularly if you're running an Alpine that is struggling, running midfield to the back of the grid, because they don't have the money. This is a cost cap era. 135 million USD or less is how much you can spend, whether you're riding at the front or right at the back. Therefore, if you are a back marker or a midfield team, every penny counts. That needs to go towards development, parts, CFD, wind tunnel time, etc., etc. Not towards fixing Esteban's car, and definitely not towards fixing Pierre Gasly's car, courtesy of another love kiss, courtesy of Frenchman Esteban Ocon. Here's what Ocon said: BWT Alpine F1 team and I, quote, have agreed together to part ways at the end of the 2024 F1 season. The Enstone family has played a significant part in my life, dating back to my Lotus Junior program days. I feel incredibly lucky and privileged to have achieved the things I did with this team, in brackets unsaid and F1, from my first podium to my first win in Formula One. These achievements truly were dreams come true. Well, let's talk about this, Esteban Ocon, since you cite it. Your first victory was in 2021 in Hungary, and you owed for the most part that victory to your teammate Fernando Alpine Alonso for his heroic God-tier defence of one on a charge Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. That was in 2021. That was Hungary. Shout out to Esteban Ocon. Fortuitous circumstances, but yet and still you need to go and execute and grab that victory as a young hungry lion in a midfield Alpine. But what happened the next year? The very next year, 12 months later at the same Grand Prix. What happened off the start, Esteban? Off the start, the irony is not lost on me that instead of defending Lewis Hamilton on the left-hand side, ran the outside of turn 1, as did your teammate Fernando Alpine Alonso do in the same fixture 12 months previous. Instead of defend him on your outside, your head was focused right. What you only had eyes for, Esteban Ocon, was defending your teammate, pushing El Plan Alonso against the bloody wall. What are we doing here? This is 12 months after he basically handed you your first and only victory to date. That was Fernando Alonso's doing, that he defended Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton so valiantly, so expertly. How do you repay the favour, Esteban Ocon? How did you repay the favour, chap? 12 months later, you nearly put Alonso in the barrier. And herein lies the problem. For the avoidance of doubt, I think Ocon is a brilliant driver when he's had his Weetabix in the morning. Really, really good racecraft. We've seen him at Monaco nearly put it on pole the same year when Max Verstappen had his God tier Sector 3. He's quick. Racecraft is levels when, of course, he's had his Weetabix. However, this dude has spite in him. Serious levels of spite to make Max Verstappen, in his most spiteful mood, look tame. Look altruistic. That type of spite. How can 12 months after Fernando El Plan Alonso's basically gotten you your first victory, Esteban, you spite him by doing what Schumacher nearly did to Barrichello many moons ago and used the barrier as an additional defender? What are you doing? Esteban, I really want to back you, sir. But when it's like this, you leave me no ammo. I have no case, NC Paddock. What did I tell you? Racing on Borough. NC Paddock, you called it, mate. Me, Cameron F1, Noddy F1 mind. I thought Esteban Ocon was going to put the nails in the coffin of Pierre Gasly. Absolutely not true. Nobody bats 1,000 apparently, but I digress. These achievements, quote, says Esteban Ocon, were dreams come true. Winning your first F1 Grand Prix courtesy of God tier defence from Fernando Alonso on Sir Lewis Hamilton, and then you repay the favour like that. What are you doing, Esteban? And again, I want to empathise with this dude because F1 is a shark's tank, right? Ruthless, really, really ruthless. Meritocracy and politics, the symbiosis of the aforementioned, each and every single time. Your heart goes out to him in a sense. He's not one of those who's born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His parents had to fight and scratch and claw for every opportunity as far as his motorsport career. You heard him on High Performance Podcast talking that way. He's not gifted in that sense. His dad didn't own the business like Lando Norris, as an example. Nor was he an F1 driver like Jos Verstappen. He had to fight and earn and scratch. He was nearly out of F1 a couple of years ago and managed to fight to survive, drive to survive, quite literally. But now look, Esteban continues, quote, I've crossed paths with so many inspiring individuals in my time here and there are too many people to thank for their hard work, passion and dedication. Thank you so much, NC Paddock, God tier F1 channel, by the way. Go and subscribe. Dedication to the cause, quote, Esteban Ocon says, but also their kindness and support I received over the years. We had many ups and downs, some downs, what do you mean some downs, Esteban? Be serious, chap. Some downs. I know we're trying to be positive in this official statement, which for those of you just joining, is to announce that Esteban Ocon and Alpine will part ways at the end of the season, potentially the end of this fella's F1 career, but I digress. Esteban says, quote, we had many ups and downs, but all I can say is that it was an honour racing alongside you, whether you were at the factories or trackside. Still, there is a long way to go this season and my focus and energy is 100% dedicated to this team and the work we need to do together to move forward and maximise our results on track. When you hear or read those statements from Esteban Ocon, they're in stark contrast, right? Diametrically opposed to his most recent actions. We move forward, he says, and look to maximise our results on track. Chat, tell me how you don't maximise for your results if you're an F1 driver. The best way to not maximise for your results and your teams is to crash into your teammate. Let's have a look at Esteban Ocon's rap sheet career to date. 2021 Hungary won, bravo sir, courtesy of Fernando Alonso's epic defence on Sir Lewis, Carl Davis and Hamilton. 2022 equivalent fixture, Hungary defends Alonso using the wall, just as did Michael Schumacher do to Rubens Barrichello, his former teammate and friend. How very dare you, Esteban Ocon. 2017 Perez crash, Eau Rouge, again largely his fault, but you can debate that one. Brazil, Max Verstappen, when he desperately wanted to what's the word that I'm looking for here? He wanted to unlap himself, didn't he, the Joker? Crash Max Verstappen. That's when you get the altercation between Max and Esteban in the pit, where Max gave him the bloody push in his chest. 2017, again, long and lengthy rap sheet for the avoidance of that. 2017, Esteban Ocon crashes at Baku into his then teammate Checo Perez, the Mexican Minister of Defense. 2018, Singapore, same thing, Checo Perez, his bloody teammate. Brazil 2022, Fernando Alonso turn for Allah 2021, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton hangs him out to dry clean. 2022, Alonso, Brazil, same race, front wing damage, lost the front wing, said Fernando Alonso, thanks to our friend. Oh, the humanity. 2023 Australia, Pierre Gasly, again his teammate, again wholly culpable for their coming together, and the most recent of these incidents, again cardinal sin settings, if indeed you're trying to maximise for the results of you and your team, as he says in his statement. 2024 Monaco, Pierre Gasly, another crash, takes himself out, DNF. Listen, F1 is a game told in tense, yeah? The success is a function of how good your people are and their ability to execute. What you can't do, therefore, is continuously sabotage the efforts of your team, particularly if they are midfield or operating towards the back. What are we doing here? What are we doing, Esteban? Desperately want to empathise with this chap, but on the back of that rap sheet, I cannot. He leaves me with no case. Finally, he says, like many drivers this season, a lot has been said about my future beyond 2024. News will be announced in due course. Will this chap get a drive? What, you think Mercedes are going to give that fella a drive, Cameron? He drives on the edge because of his humble beginnings. I think that doesn't get brought up in. Absolutely, Cameron, you've nailed it there, chap. And this is why I empathise, right? Because this could be his opportunity gone. The opportunity he's fought and scrapped and scraped. That opportunity, it is sad, right? As I think about it in real time and think he's a really, really decent driver, to say the bloody least. But mistakes and sabotage, like bloody Nora. Like, come on, Esteban. I was rooting for you, chap. What's Funky saying? I hate this. May get cooked. He's one of the most naturally talented drivers on the grid. I don't disagree with you, Funky. He's a very, very good driver. Beat Max Verstappen in F3. Like, do you know what I mean? He's all right. He's Esteban Ocon. We can't chastise him as far as his ability. But listen, what did we say just now a while ago? It's not just about how good your people are. It's the symbiosis between that and their ability to execute on a regular basis. That latter portion of that stanza is what Esteban Ocon has not been doing. Oh, on the contrary, he's been sabotaging himself and the efforts of his team by crashing into his teammate all the bloody time, Esteban. Do you know what I mean? You forced Alpine's hand, fella. Go through them again for the avoidance of that. 21 Hungary, he wins courtesy of Alonso. 2022, he repays the favour by closing his teammate Fernando Alonso into the bloody war, as did Michael Schumacher do to Rubens Barrichello, his teammate so many years previous. 2017 Perez Eau Rouge, again 100% bloody Esteban Ocon's fault, crashing into his teammate. Brazil tried to unlap himself against Max Verstappen and got pushed for for what it's worth. 2017 Baku, same thing on his teammate Perez. 2018 Singapore Perez, same thing, teammate crash. 2022 Brazil Fernando Alonso, turn 4, similar to 2021 Max Verstappen on Lewis Hamilton, hangs his teammate out to dry, nearly causes Fernando Alonso to lose it, courtesy of snap oversteer. 2022, same race, crashes into Fernando Alonso. Alonso says, nearly lost, in fact, I've lost the front wing, thanks to our friend. 2023, Australia, Pierre Gasly again, wholly attributable to Esteban Ocon's recklessness. You can't keep crashing out your teammate and expect to stay in F1. And then finally, the most recent of Esteban Ocon's indiscretions, 2024 Monaco. That was probably, you might argue, the lightest of them. There was a gap and he went for it. Understeer meant that he collided with his teammate, but sometimes you got to chalk it up to the game. In the words of Ayrton Senna de Silva, if you no longer go for a gap, then you're no longer a racing driver, right? But listen, sometimes you got to go and do some time, mate. If your rap sheet is that long, that extensive, if those are the mistakes that you're making and that's how bad they are on a frequent basis, it is only a matter of time. Esteban brings truth to the entire episode of Top Gear. Funky, I'm telling you, listen, he's not bad. I can't say it enough. He isn't a bad driver, Esteban, but he makes bad mistakes all too frequently. It'd be disingenuous of me to come in here and talk about Charles Leclerc as modern day Jean Lazy, criticise that fella for unforced errors, and then stick to my pick of Esteban Ocon, who I think is a brilliant driver. You've got to condemn him for his execution or lack thereof, and I say execution with pun intended, because of course, for those of you who are just joining, Esteban Ocon, again, Chris Medland's just put out, he will leave Alpine at the end of the season. Both sides have said that they agree to part ways. We know what that means, really, what that's code for. No confirmation of his next move or replacement as of the time of writing, Jay. It will require some rebalancing of powers inside Mercedes F1 team, but if that can get sorted, you might see part of the original kingpins from Red Bull move to Mercedes. Is that what we're saying, Jay? Is that what you're hearing on the rumour mill? I don't know about the Mercedes thing and the Red Bull link, if only because Adrian Newey, so are you here on the rumour mill, does not fancy Toto Wolff. He's not a big fan of him. And Esteban Ocon, had he kept his nose clean, courtesy of the links with Toto Wolff, good friends, he's his manager, could potentially have found his way into that Mercedes seat. No. True or false? Now that is all fugazi, faded to black. The likely probability of that outcome is one of these, a big fat zero. No one's going to want to take him on. What, you think Haas are going to risk? Don't want to take a risk with Esteban? Who's going to want to take that fella? He finds himself in the worst of situations. Exactly what he said he didn't want to do. Again, quote Esteban Ocon, the important thing is to be secure as far as my seat as early as possible. That is a clear target of mine, said Esteban Ocon. I don't want to pay the price a second time. Of course, he's alluding to the fact that only a couple of years ago, he was nearly out of F1, didn't have a seat. This is chaos. Here's where we are. It's the 3rd of the 6th, 2024, and Esteban Ocon will not be racing for Alpine next year. It is chaos. It was rumoured that he was going to be benched. Bruno Faman, again, team principal of Alpine, said words to this effect. There are going to be serious consequences for that collision between Esteban Ocon and our other driver, Pierre Gasly. So these are the serious consequences. It was rumoured that a conversation was being had with Jack Doohan that potentially at the Canadian Grand Prix they were going to bench Esteban Ocon and Jack Doohan was going to come in and drive for one race. The seriousness of the ramifications of that incident at Monaco, for which Esteban Ocon was wholly culpable, are far-reaching, more than we anticipated. He won't drive for Alpine after this year. Good luck, Esteban. Wish you well, mate. I'm not even going to speak to the fact that he's probably one of the most hated drivers on the grid in June of 24. It bears no relevance. It's not even worth it at this stage, you know. I don't want to be harsh. Only 20 drivers, so pressure comes with the job. Absolutely, Leroy. This is meritocracy and execution and that symbiosis of so many different things in one, right? You've got to nail it. You've got to be able to handle the pressure and politic and zig when you should zag. Like, do you know what I mean? There are so many like bullets for you to dodge as an F1 driver. The one thing that you know that you can't afford to do then is bloody crash. Definitely not into your teammate. And how many times have we read that? Look at these. You count this on one hand. Hungary won. Cool. That was his pinnacle. Probably will never get better than that for Esteban Ocon. 2022, crash. 2017, crash. Brazil, crash with Max Verstappen. I don't even know what year that was. Probably 2017 as well. 2017, Baku, Perez, crash. 2018, crash. Perez, Singapore. 22, Brazil, crash. Alonso, teammate, Australia, Gasly, crash. 2024, teammate, Monaco, crash. How many of those? Go on, let's count them up. 9 over the past 2 or 3 years. No, it's not good enough, Esteban. Rooting for you, mate. I wish you the best at that. But this is F1. This is where quite literally you drive to survive now. And sadly for Esteban Ocon, he hasn't been doing that, courtesy of more than a couple sabotage moment. The instant that I saw Sky Sports F1 publish a video whose title was 6 times Esteban Ocon has crashed his teammate, you had to know. We all knew that Esteban Ocon was living on borrowed time. Bruno Fernand told us as much at the end of the Monaco Grand Prix, courtesy of his conversations with French TV, that there would be serious ramifications. There are your serious ramifications. And more broadly for Esteban Ocon, if we're being very, very serious, where does he go from now as far as his F1 career? Does this chap even have himself an F1 career? We're talking about Esteban Ocon. Exactly, Jay. Visual. Ocon should go to NASCAR. Oh, the humanity visual. Esteban Ocon versus Crash Maldonado. Mate, I don't even know which one I would have, quite frankly. At this stage, maybe Maldonado. You might conclude that he crashed less, was less of a liability. But there you go. That's your breaking news. 500. Listen, do me a favour and smash the like if you're watching this. Trying to talk to the news as it breaks. Esteban Ocon no longer an Alpine driver as at January of 2025. This will be his last season at Alpine and potentially his last season in F1, because I'm not sure which team is going to want to take a chance on the Frenchman, as did Alpine. They knew that Gasly and Ocon did not get along. They were not friends and were not good bedfellows. They've never been. Courtesy of their childhood career and some comings together, they grew up mere meters away from each other in France. Gasly could not get down with Esteban Ocon. Courtesy of some of these things I think we're talking about, right? Not a great teammate, not a great person, the most hated driver in F1 of the 20 currently on the grid by all accounts. Alpine took a risk on him, and this could be the final nail in Esteban Ocon's coffin, not just as an Alpine driver but as an F1 driver. Because Jay, I will be honest with you, as proper as that chap's skills are in a car, brilliant driver, beat Max Verstappen, though fortuitously owing to Max Verstappen's car not being as reliable as it ought to have been, but beat Max Verstappen in F3, and that has to count for something, right? He's not a bad peddler. He couldn't be and do that. But then sometimes you don't gauge an F1 driver by their upside, right? It's the lows of their lowermost points. You've got to execute, and frequently you can't just win in Hungary 2021 and then crash your teammate each and every single race as near as makes no difference since then. Because as a driver, you've got to characterize yourself as a W13, right? Peaky performance curve, but so infrequently do you access the uppermost reaches of that peaky performance curve. As a driver, if you are Esteban Ocon, then it's really not worth it, right? The juice from an Esteban Ocon perspective, if you are a team in 2025 going forward, probably is not worth the squeeze. Cost cap settings, money is all important. Cash is king. You can't afford to spend all that money fixing back the car on the back of one of your driver Esteban Ocon's mistakes. It's nonsense. It's a pity. I empathise with Esteban Ocon's circumstance. I wish him the best for the future and would like to see him in another F1 team going forward. Will that happen? My crystal ball is as murky as the next person's, but I'm not so sure. Cost cap era. Can't afford to have a liability in your car. If you are a progressive, forward-thinking team principal, please see James Vowles. You think James Vowles is going to have him in that Williams? Absolutely no chance. Cannot afford it. Oh, the humanity peddlers. F1 is a shark's tank. Esteban Ocon is gonzo. Definitely from Alpine. Potentially from F1. The world watches and waits with bated breath to see how this one plays out. No further questions, Your Honour, but I digress.